Good afternoon. My name is Michael Conley, and as many of you know, I'm the Director of Finance and Operations. And we thought it would be helpful if I spent about 10 minutes today. It's January 23rd, 2017, going over some information about the FY18 school budget and kind of where things sort of stand. We are in the very early stages of that process, but some of the topics I thought I would cover today would be, first and foremost, going over the FY18 budget calendar and looking at some key dates in that process, talking a little bit about the state budget, looking at some of our preliminary budget challenges when we're developing the fiscal 2018 budget, and then spending a little more time talking about our capital budget and our requests that we have for next year, the large capital request, and the process that we go through with the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. And at the end, I thought I would show you how you can access some key budget information and some links online and so forth that will be helpful to you as we move through the process. So, as I just discussed, the FY18 budget calendar, we have moved through the early stages of this process. As you can see, in September was devoted to the capital improvement plan, developing that plan, and having the school committee vote our large capital projects. And then once those are voted, they are submitted to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, which is a larger board consisting of some major stakeholders in the community that look at all of the capital requests, not only just the school departments, but the town-wide departments as well. We then approved our goals, and we are now in the kind of development stages, kind of the behind-the-scenes development stages, November, December, and January, where we're receiving requests in from principals and directors and budget leaders, and vetting those requests as an administrative team, and soliciting staff input, etc., to prepare the budget that best meets our goals and our strategic plan. So that's the process we're in now. I have highlighted a few key dates there, which are dates that are geared towards the public, and that would be beginning with the March 13th, our preliminary budget presentation to the school committee. That would be made Monday, March 13th. We then do our annual public hearing on the FY18 school budget. That is set to happen on Monday, April 10th. These would all happen in the Distance Learning Lab at about 6:30 to 7 p.m. The school committee would not be set to vote the budget until May 1st. And then, as you know, town meeting happens the first Monday in June, where we would look for final approval by the community on our school budget on Monday, June 5th. So the state budget is I thought we'd start by looking at a little bit of what's happening in the state. The state budget is due to be released this Wednesday, January 25th. The governor is hard at work at the state budget, but we can sort of look at trends and signals of what's happening in the state, and generally they somewhat correlate with some of the challenges and what we can expect to see at the local level with North Reading, with how challenging of a budget year we may be looking at. And unlike very similarly to prior years, we are looking at a challenging budget at the state level. There's a significant state budget gap. Revenue sources are not keeping up with costs of their ongoing expenses. The state has used temporary revenue sources to balance their budget and over the last several years, and based a lot of balance the budget on a lot of cost saving initiatives that haven't been realized to its fullest extent. So there's also been, over the last few fiscal years, a pattern of instability with consecutive years of mid-year budget cuts. And when I say mid-year budget cuts, the governor has the ability, what they refer to as a 9C cut. And if revenue is not coming in based on projections, he is allowed to make and does make, and did this year and last year as well, some mid-year cuts. Now, fortunately, North Reading has avoided any major. We've kind of not been impacted by those cuts, but certainly a lot of municipalities and districts and programs and grants have been impacted. We just have been fortunate that we have not been significantly impacted by some of these mid-year cuts. That is the beginning of their process. Once the governor releases his budget on Wednesday, it moves on to the House, and then on to the Senate, and then to the conference committee. And it's really not officially approved until mid to late June. So it is a long process. There is a link here if you want more information on the state budget and the challenges and the initial outlook. That information is there for you. If we're looking at our preliminary funding challenges in North Reading, and we're seeing some of the same trends that the state is seeing, and we have some initial challenges. The school department has put forward a very preliminary budget. Again, we're still in that development phase. It's just really a working document at this point. We do have a draft of the document, but we're soliciting input from staff, from principals, from budget leaders, from a little bit from the boards, and just trying to finalize and fine-tune our requests and see where things are at. But we do know that as it stands today, there is a significant budget gap that does exist. And this can mainly be contributed to local revenue sources, taxes, state aid, local receipts, not increasing at the same pace as we see fixed costs increase by Medicare, health insurance, general liability insurance, retirement costs. Those are some examples of some fixed costs. And really not being anyone's really fault why there's kind of this budget gap. But what we've seen is there's just a structural problem that exists statewide when we attempt to fund school and municipal budgets. As we know, property taxes are capped at the 2.5%. Other revenue sources with the community, as well as into North Reading schools, state aid, local receipts, even our federal and state grants, those revenue sources are flat, and we see our fixed costs that I just mentioned a short time ago increasing at rates much greater than the 2.5%. Health insurance rates, 4 to 8% generally. That's what we've seen. Other fixed costs, general liability insurances, the cost to participate in the Middlesex County retirement system, that assessment cost to participate, those rising between 5 and 7% or greater each year. So it presents this structural problem, and that's why I think in a lot of ways we begin with this budget gap that we try to work to close over the course of the process. North Reading School Department has also used a lot of one-time revenue sources to balance the budget over the last several years, whether they be federal stimulus, recovery grants, our revolving accounts. We've tried to do what we can to be creative in the revenue sources that are available to kind of make things work. Here's a quick bar graph that shows a lot of those structural challenges that I just spoke of. The blue represents the fixed cost, the green, the revenue available to municipalities and to the community. And as you can see, fixed costs generally are increasing at double the rate of revenue. So it presents a structural challenge and problem when trying to fund municipal and school budgets. As you know, our funding sources for a school budget, the majority of that comes from local taxes. We do receive state aid, which has been flat. Our state aid has almost been level funded over the last several years. Local receipts, excise taxes, permits, licensing fees, etc., make up the next largest portion. And then our user fees that we assess for things like athletic, extracurricular activities, busing, tuitions like preschool and kindergarten, and then our federal and state grants that we receive from the federal and state government makes up the remaining pie of our chart of the revenue sources available. Here's a history of the operating budget, and I spoke of earlier that you can see the community and the school department, after receiving a larger increase in 2009, has been trying to make do during what was that economic recession in 2010, 11, and 12. Through the ARA stimulus grants that we received. So we kind of made do through some very modest budget increases by using these ARA grants that were given to us during that time of the peak of the economic recession. We then recovered somewhat for a couple years, and then these last years, and particularly in 2014, that is when we begin to use available balances that were in our revolving accounts, and used up the majority of those over the last few years, beginning with 2014, to keep things going. And what we're seeing, which is presenting even a greater challenge as we look towards the future, is a lot of these accounts are drying up and will not be available into the future. So we're seeing that even more of a challenge does exist. I also wanted to present a little bit of a background on our capital requests. As you know, as you saw in the budget calendar a short time ago, our capital requests is the beginning of our process. We have 4 major FY18 capital requests for next year. The highest priority is our elementary Wi-Fi upgrade. We are hoping to receive a state grant that would help us fund the cost of this project. We are awaiting word of what that may be, but we've gotten good notification to date that we are recipient of a digital learning grant that would help fund this elementary Wi-Fi project. But certainly the elementary schools, the bachelor school, hood school, and little school are in need of a Wi-Fi upgrade to meet our digital learning goals. Certainly the infrastructure, switches and routers and servers and so forth need to be upgraded and replaced, as well as access points to increase our wireless range needs to be installed and purchased at each elementary school. So that is the kind of the largest ticket item. We are subsidizing that by what we anticipate will be some federal funding through an E-rate program, as well as through a state grant. So that is good news, but we're kind of waiting word on what that will be. Kind of an ongoing request that's the school department has had over the last several years is a $60,000 allotment to fund our computer devices. This will certainly help us achieve a one-to-one program that we are initiating over the next several years, beginning at the middle school level. So that is exciting, and the cost of that is about $60,000. From a facility standpoint, the Bachelor Street, Peabody Street entrance repair, there's showing signs of deterioration. That's the concrete pad and the stairwell and the columns that represent that entrance at the Bachelor Elementary School. And we feel a $25,000 allotment would help us make the appropriate repairs to that entranceway. A request that we're hoping to have to help us with snow removal and a variety of other maintenance issues that would be of great assistance to the school department would be a Toolcat utility vehicle. It's a multifunction utility vehicle that would be primary use probably for snow removal, but it can do a lot of other things as well that would be of great assistance, increasing efficiency, reducing the need for contractual services. So that is our 4th request. These requests are listed in priority order as voted by the school committee back in September. And this process, as I touched upon earlier, does move through what is known as the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. This is some key dates of their timeline. The requests go to this committee at the end of September. The committee, which consists of 9 members, finance committee members, board of selectmen members, school committee members, as well as myself. I'm a member of that committee. The town administrator and the town finance director are members of that committee. We review all of the requests in December and January. We attempt to rank those requests and come to consensus of the ranking order based on the needs town-wide. This happens in February and March. And then we make a presentation to the Board of Selectmen of what we feel are the priority requests to be funded. This happens in April, and we look at our financial strategy and the requests that can be funded through raise and appropriation, through free cash, and as well as through through borrowing and bonding for some of the large capital requests, and we make that recommendation to the Board of Selectmen in April, and then if they approve it, it gets submitted to the June town meeting, which would happen obviously in June. So it's a pretty thorough process that the CIPC members go through, and they vet and review these requests from all departments in detail. They hear presentations from each department head on their requests, and they also make field trips as needed to make sure they have all the information necessary to rank and make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. I also thought it would be helpful if I spent a little bit of time going over how you could access key budget information online. So the budget calendar that I just referenced is available right on the district website under the link for budget. You can kind of view our calendar and see what's available online. Here's the calendar that you can access that is there for you to look at. Other information that's available that's included here is you can link right to the school district website and the budget information, so that which actually goes through the calendar. These dates here in blue are all information that is hyperlinked, so this gets updated as we move through the budget process. So if you wanted to access links to the school committee budget goals, links to our large capital plan, all that information is here and available to you. I talked about the capital plan. The school department does have a 5-year capital plan, which is this link here, and that was presented to the school committee in September. So if any member of the community wants to get more detailed information of the requests that are in our capital plan for the next 5 years, as well as the 4 that I spoke of this year, that information is all here in relatively detailed format for you. I also included in the presentation a link to my Twitter page. So I do post updates about the budget process on Twitter throughout the school year, as well as some other key information that's at NRPS Finance. So that information is there and available to you as well. I also am starting a new email address. The email address is business@nrpsk12.org. So as we move through the budget process, I'll be doing other short 10 to 15 minute budget presentations on specific topics like I'm doing today. If you have any questions about anything, my goal is that you can email this email address business@nrpsk12.org. I'll try to check this address regularly and provide answers to you. So this was a video number 1 about the budget process. As you know, we focused today on the budget calendar and key dates. We talked about the state budget and some of our preliminary challenges that we see that are facing both the town of North Reading and the school department during the FY18 budget development process. We also talked a little bit about our capital needs and capital requests that are before the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. Other future topics that I hope to bring to you in this format in the future, perhaps next, I hope to do one each month, is a review of state aid, including the Chapter 70 program. The preliminary Chapter 70 program is due to be released at the end of the month, so we hope to kind of discuss some more information and detailed information, maybe dispel any myths and misperceptions of how state aid and the Chapter 70 program work. In March, I know it's always a question by many community members during the annual public budget hearings is you have your general fund budget request, but we know there are other school budget subsidies in offsets in the form of revolving accounts, federal and state grants. Kind of what are those and where does that money go to, the user fees, the grants. So I hope to maybe do more of shed some light on some of that information. We always look at our comparable districts and compare some of our data, financial data, as well as our spending data to comparable districts. So I thought perhaps we could look at some of that information and that data later on during the budget process, perhaps at the end of March. And then in April, we'll be presenting at the annual budget hearing at the beginning of April. And I thought we could do another presentation that would focus on what are the key budget drivers driving the school budget, what are the budget priorities, what are the key things we're looking to accomplish. So I would stay tuned for those information and some future topics. That being said, I hope this information and short presentation was helpful to you, and I hope to bring some additional information to you in the future. Thank you for viewing, and I hope to see you and hear from all of you in the very near future.